Evening, hi. Looks like it's starting to appear online. Hello, Olv in Norway. Hello, Firepower Wargaming. Happy New Year to you. Hello, Whiskey Priest. Very good evening. And Roman from Prague. Hi, Roman. And Jason down, I believe, in Devon. Tiny Terrain Models. Andy Shaw, Julian Dale. I'm going to stop doing this, otherwise I'll spend the whole evening reading things out. I'm just putting together some bits and pieces. I'm just having a coffee, actually, just to try and restart my life. But I bought some, probably can't see these very well. Well, maybe you can. War bases, little carts, peasant carts. Which I'm putting together, or hopefully putting together, for my Renaissance stuff. I really like the idea of having some kind of baggage train to go with it. John Savage in Yorkshire. Hello, John. Very good evening to you. I won't start talking about the reason I've called you here today until no Prosecco done. Although I did just discover this loitering next to my desk. I'm not quite sure when that was there. And oh, I found that Father Jack now. There's several more, but no, it's an entirely dry evening. And I thought it might be nice just to have a few of you. Good evening to Andy in Bristol, Reg from Dagenham, modelling for Advantage. If a single coffee can restart your life, you can't be far off the right track. Well, you know, if only that were the case. I walked 7 miles today, and I was starting to run out of petrol. I was doing 5 miles, and as I was coming back towards Lard Island, my dog saw me from a distance away where he was walking with my wife, so I ended up having to go and walk with them for an extra bit. So running out of petrol. Right, I've just taken all the bits out of this sprue, I suppose you call it. And now, hi Tamsin, and hi Emilio in Galicia, in northwestern Spain. Ian, hello Ian, looking good, Rich. Oh, not that good really, it's a Christmas jumper, but right, got rid of that. Right, I'll see if I can work out how to make this bloody thing now. Good day to Roger Abbott down under. Hi Nathan, down in Devon or Cornwall. I'm never quite sure whether you're just over the border or not. Yeah, good idea, get a beer. I'm not sure how long I'm going to go without getting a beer, but we'll see how that works. But I thought it might be a nice idea just to have a chat and build some stuff and do whatever. However, I've just realised that I've taken all these bits out of the sprue and I have no idea how they go together. Hi, Jeremy in the USA. Let's hope things are a bit more civilised here than we're seeing over there. Things are going a bit crazy. We won't talk about that. What else am I doing this evening? Well, I'm going to put these bits back in this plastic bag because I'm looking at them and I can't work out how to do it. And what I'm also going to do is get some Landsknechts together and chop down some pikes. So anybody out there doing anything? Any boys and girls out there making stuff? Hello, Stockholm. got a big box here of bits that are for my Renaissance project. So these are quite nice. These are from Bad Squiddo Games. They're sort of lanterns. And I bought some other lanterns that were 3D printed, which were very nice. They didn't quite have the same look. They were more box shaped, but they've got a hook. And I thought I'd combine the hook of them with these and have them hanging on some of the Renaissance buildings. Some more sort of Bad Squiddo stuff. And he produces some really, really nice stuff. And of course, the beauty of doing a Renaissance type thing is it's pretty fantasy based anyway, in terms of that type of period. So you can get things like the packs of boxes and shit like that, and away you go. I'll tell you what else I bought from Warbases today. Some of their animals. I've got some dogs who might look quite nice hanging around the streets, but also some, I don't know how well you can see them, geese, which I thought when I do farmyard would be nice. But the main thing I'm prepping tonight are pikemen. I had a bit of a horror story this morning. I did all my pikemen. I bought these pikes from North Star, and they were 100 mil long, which is 4 inches in real money. And I painted them and stuck them all on, and I thought, actually, they're too bloody long. So I had to pull 30 of them off some figures that I'd painted this morning, which was heartbreaking to do. So I'll need to be doing some touching up there. Ian's doing some more Napoleonics for General Darmé. Can't have enough. Well, you can never have enough of anything. Rattlesnake, working on some 28mm Russian Hussars from the Perrys. Cheeky. I've just got a load of Perry stuff through. They arrived yesterday. Big box of Swiss. I've gone with a mixture of metal for things like halberdiers and also plastics for the general. I think they call them mercenaries or something like that, which are very nice. And the idea is that I can replace the plastic pikes with the metal pikes, because obviously plastic pikes are not ideal. The only issue is that looking at the models and the way they're holding the pikes, I think it's going to be some major surgery in order to do that. Chris Cormo was doing Landsknechts, more Landsknechts apparently. Neil, Blood Bowl team, right, good work. 15mm auxilia for infamy, brilliant. That's Ivan. Where are you, Ivan? In the world? Peter Melchett is going to do his Spanish windmill. I've just put that down the workshop because I thought it's not going to happen immediately, But it looks like a fabulous model. All right. Burmese terrain, making model for that. Fabulous. Scratch building terrain. I've been doing a bit of scratch building terrain, which is Zulus for Nathan, thousands of them, I hope. Broom bristles for pikes. Well, I could do, but I've spent a load of money on loads and loads of pikes, so I'll try with them. But broom bristles is a really good idea, especially if you can get ones that are suitably non-bendy. In Uruguay. Ah, Ivan's in Uruguay. I don't know what hello is in Uruguayan, but hello. Hasta la vista or something like that, I suppose. .28mm Roman auxiliaries, trimming and priming now. They're lovely. I think those Roman auxiliaries are some of the nicest plastic figures that I've ever seen. I bought the metal Roman auxiliaries from Warlord, which are very nice, but the plastic ones unusually are almost identical to them, or they appeared to be so to me anyway. And they're really, really nice models. The only thing I find with them, for me, is I prefer to replace the spears with metal spears, but that's very easily done if you get a pin vise and just drill it out. So here's a question. Lee Miller, 148th or 156 for 28mm for chain of command. What's your preference? Well, I think I corrupted Skinner to an extent because I bought loads and loads of Corgi metal tanks, because I always bleat on about this, but traveling around all over the place with stuff for a game means that I am really focused more on having stuff that's going to be robust than anything else. So I went with the metal Corgis, and I think that has kind of encouraged Skinner to go that way as well. Although I'm slightly different to him, very different in many ways. I like 156 scale for early war because they're teeny tiny tanks, and the teenier and tinier the better, I like. And I like 1/50th or 1/48 for later war because they're a bit bigger. Hello to the Inselaf in Hamburg. Sorry, I'm not sure if I can read that properly, but I can read Hamburg. Guten Abend. I hope you're well. Pete in New Zealand was a bit wary about plastics. We'll do the spear swap thing. Yeah, I just found with the plastics that I started off with when I was playtesting Infamy, every time I took them out for a game, one or two would break. And if I hold on, these spears are quite tough. Sydney, hello Sid. Have I finished my small footprint buildings yet, Richard? Yeah, I have actually. Time to paint some flouncy shirt. Yeah, I haven't finished them yet completely, Sydney. I'll go and get them actually and show you them. I'll take the bloody jumper off as well because it's boiling. I haven't quite finished them because I haven't done the doors, but there's kind of the main building with the garderobe on the outside. I think that this brown was inspired by the colour of your trousers, Sydney. And here's a smaller sort of residential building, which looks a lot similar to the ones that you wrote about in the Loud magazine. And this one, I'm quite pleased with. It's not finished yet, and the roof's not stuck on. Is the main sort of centerpiece, if you like, the tower, the great gateway. And I've just stuck a well on there. So these three pieces are going to go on this 6-inch square base. It's one of the war bases, terrain bases, so it's kind of random shape. Yeah, nearly there with that. Right, if I put my spectacles on, I might be able to see what I'm doing. The problem is I've got these spectacles which allow me to see what I'm doing here in terms of cutting things up, but they don't allow me to see what's going on the bloody screen. So I'll put these spectacles on to see what's going on the screen. Evening, what's all this then? I don't know, really. It's nothing, Battle Knights, really, other than the fact that I kind of thought, you know, as we go back into lockdown in the UK, one of the things that we are seeing is that, you know, the ability to have social intercourse with our gaming chums is limited, restricted, less than it ever used to be. And I think that's a terrible shame. And I know an awful lot of people are feeling a little bit fed up. I think we've gone through, you know, all different lockdowns and kind of accepted it and swallowed it, but we're now in a situation where whilst we've got the jab being rolled out, you know, there's a lot of us still thinking we're going to be a long way off before returning to normality. So I thought it would be a nice idea if we kind of all got together. Now, one of the things I'm not overly happy with is this format, because you lot just sat there looking at my ugly mug and listening to me waffle on. And it's all very well, I can say, you know, greetings from freezing Madrid, which is nice to see. I presume that's you, Benito, over there, having seen your comment earlier. but there's not a lot of dialogue. There's not a lot of backwards and forwards. Now there's alternatives. What length am I going with the Pikes Whiskey Priest? Yeah, 80 mil. I was doing 100 mil, and they just looked a bit ridiculous. And my mate who I'm doing it with is the Traitor McKipper, and I think there's a size issue involved here. And he was saying he'd be a bit embarrassed if mine were far more prominent than his. So we agreed on an 80 mil length, and that's what I'm doing. So I'm just kind of, as you can see, I'm really measuring these carefully and chopping the ends off them. But I think 80 mil looks about right. So that's where we're going. But yeah, talking about hello Sven in Berlin. I think one of the things that we've got to think about is what, and this is kind of what I thought would be worthwhile chatting about here tonight, is what are the alternatives? Because a lot of people have said, oh, Discord works really well, and Discord does work really well, and Zoom meetings work really well. I mean, we had a great evening on Tuesday evening with the guys from the local club where we all got together and just I made some buildings, funnily enough, the ones that we were just looking at, and everybody, you know, did whatever they wanted to do, painted stuff, and Panda drank 16 cans of special brew. And, you know, but the important thing was we were all having a chat and having a laugh, and it kind of keeps you sane. I mean, one of our very good friends, will I sing later on? I never sing. The whole singing thing is a complete fabrication and lie. One of our friends is hello Northern Ireland. I hope you're all well over there in the province. One of my friends is got a medical condition, which means that he literally, you know, can't go out, can't walk the dog, this, that, and the other. And he said that, you know, we chatted until about midnight, and he said how important it was and how much he'd enjoyed the evening. And I just thought, well, you know, there's a lot of us who are in similar situations, whether we've got medical conditions or we're just fed up with the sight of looking at the wife, or the dog, or the wallpaper, or, you know, whatever. And I thought it would be a good idea if we tried to find an alternative to this, because this, to me, doesn't really work. It's fine for me to pontificate, but I don't really like pontificating, and I'd much rather it was a two-way dialogue. And what I was talking about was, you know, we've used Discord and we've used Zoom a lot, and we've used them very successfully, and they've been great. But once you push it past half a dozen or 8, well, certainly by the time, hello, Jeremy in Belfast, nice to see you, nice. And Monkey Player in Penguinland in Sweden, good to see you there. Hope your igloos are holding up. Yeah, so the idea is that using things like Discord and Zoom are great for 8 people, but once you get to a dozen people, everybody wants to talk, everybody's cutting over each other, and it really doesn't work. It's what I referred to as the zoo effect. So I was wondering if anybody had any ideas, but one of the things I was thinking about potentially was, what I don't want to do is make this the Oddcast Plus. So I don't really think you want to see me talking to Nick and Sid, because, to be honest with you, you know, we say what we say in the Oddcast, and I don't want to dilute that by making it. Nigel, good evening from Norwich. Is it the quiz of the week? 28 Mary, War the Rose, very nice. I thought it would be a good idea. What might be an idea might be to invite 2-3 people on here who, just to talk, other lardies from all around the community around the globe, and just chew the fat, and everybody else could be there and be watching and be chipping in with comments, and that would allow me a bit more time to have a look at what's going on down the side of the screen, although it's actually over there, and then be the host with the most, although it's not a role that I fit naturally in, as Sydney clearly is the man on the sofa of sincerity, the couch of contemplation. But I didn't know what people thought of that, or I didn't know if you had anybody had any other ideas. Julian in Scotland, welcome aboard. And your comment about, appreciating painting hobby nights because of, issues such as anxiety is a really, really important one. And I think one of the positive things that we're seeing now is that unlike, 20, 30 years ago when we didn't talk about these things and, focused on keeping a stiff upper lip, I think that we're in a situation now where it's good that we're able to be honest about issues that we find very real and important to us. And that's something that I mentioned what I was doing to my daughter, and she said, "You're going to bore people to tears. They're not interested. Everybody's fed up with talking about lockdown." But somehow, I don't know about you, but somehow I'm kind of feeling as we go into a third lockdown with no end in sight, that it would be better. I'm feeling that it's getting to the point where it's even more stressful than before for some reason. So there we are. That's what I was thinking about. So I don't know what other people think. I'm going to shut up and not dress up like Graham Norton. Video casts with some guesswork. I'll be doing this soon on my channel. Yeah, I thought about that. I mean, it's one of the things that we're... Now, I can't see these, or I can't see your comments. Right, hold on. One of the things that might be a nice idea would be for people to contact me and say, look, I'm doing this project, or me and my mates are doing this project, and this is how it's working. And we could have people coming along who weren't famous celebrities in the hobby. Not that the hobby really has any famous celebrities, but just wargamers doing the same stuff as the rest of us. And I just thought it might be an idea to do that, and then other people can join in with their comments. Equally, I don't know, maybe we could try Discord and have hundreds of people on and see what was going on. I mean, I don't know. Yes, I mean, we've got over 100 people here now, and we're like 5 minutes in or whatever. No, 20 minutes in. I wonder how practical it would be to do things on Discord. Now, Fred Charlie up in Scotland raises a point. He said the rooms in Discord work pretty well as long as people do actually move around, so there's circulation. I totally agree with that. The problem is people don't actually move around, and so there's not a lot of circulation. I mean, I have been to events on Discord where I thought, I must go and have a chat with so-and-so, and I've literally not been able to get into their room for the whole event. And unlike a real pub where you can go in and physically chuck somebody out the window or defenestrate them, Sydney, we can't do that. So, star guests from Wargaming, said David Huntley. Well, my wife always says about being known as a famous wargamer is pretty much on par with being famous for exposing yourself in the local park. So I don't know how many famous wargamers we actually have around, and I don't even know if any of them would want to come and talk to me. But and again, what format would that take? Would maybe going to that 3 or 4 people on here, just talking to people, but generally, what's important to people? What is important? Is it just having a bit of background noise while they paint and the opportunity to, or is it important to have the opportunity to stand up and say, what a rubbish, Clarky, you're talking nonsense. I want to have my say, because that's certainly a position Skinner takes regularly. So it's not an illegitimate position. Hobbsy is the only famous wargamer. That is true, actually, Ralph. Although I have known a bit of glitter being sprinkled around the hobby elsewhere, which is Rick Priestley. Right, yeah, absolutely. maybe that's somewhere where we ought to extend an invite, and he can maybe give us a masterclass on writing rules. Alan Smith, Hobby and Wargames, currently putting up videos of his Roman fort based on my concept. Well, I bet your application of that concept is a bit than mine. Lost my hobby mojo. Peter's saying, I lost my hobby. He lost his hobby mojo because it feels like I never play with toys I've been painting. Just all round grim. Well, do you know what? I think there's a lot of us feeling that to one degree or another. And I think that's one of the reasons why it's good and positive to be doing something like this. Now, one of the things I think it's important to say is I don't think that it's necessarily beholden on me to entertain people 7 days a week, but, and you wouldn't want me to, because you very quickly get bored of me. My wife will let you have that in writing in triplicate, but it is, if you're not doing something similar with your local Wargames club or with your mates, then it is something that I would advise everybody to try and do. I mean, there's quite a few people on here who've run games on Zoom, and I played in a lot of games on Zoom, but only started doing that fairly recently, and discovering how easy it was to do. So whilst we're feeling that, you know, we're not in the game again, if we don't have to embrace too much technology to make something like that happen, is what I'm saying. And I do think maybe it would be a good idea, if we're going to be having people in talking to people, that maybe we could ask them to come along here. And I don't know if we can put some slides up on this. I mean, I think we can. I think there's ways of doing it, and that's something I could look at. And maybe we could have people talking about the way that they have successfully run games online and done things, because there are ways around it. And yeah, it's not the same, but it's not a terrible substitute. I've played a lot more games in the last 3 or 4 months than I would normally do. I mean, it was getting to the point before Christmas where I was doing 5 games a week. It was literally getting to the point where I wasn't getting any bloody work done, which is less than ideal. So one of the things that I think it's important to say here is that, you know, this isn't just about doing this as a sort of large event. It's about being able to do something similar, although you probably wouldn't want to put it on YouTube, but picking up something on with Zoom and doing that with your mates, or whatever you use for work, or keeping in touch with, you know, family and relatives or friends, and then trying to utilize that. Teams allows the presenter to unmute contributors and raise their hand so they can ask a question. That's a good idea. Andy in Bristol said, I think it's just to have something communal. I think that's where you can watch and chat along, much like watching Twitch live stream. Ask your kids. Well, funnily enough, you cheeky sod, I did have a look at Twitch earlier on today, and people on there were talking a load of bollocks, obviously, but it was interesting to see what they were doing and how they were doing it. Henry Ida Battle Chat Fames. Yeah, we could have Henry on. We've always made it a point not to have many celebrities on, because one of the things that we've found in the hobby generally is that there tends to be a circulation of wargaming celebrities going around from one place to the next, and all telling you pretty much the same story as they've told somewhere else. And so it's not that we are snubbing Henry, it's just that we kind of thought, I'm not sure we really want to be inviting the same people on as everybody else has on, but that's just my thought. Chris Lane says Teams is clunky though, it can have a dreadful lag. I've had a few dreadful lags in my time. our club had a great chat over Messenger last night. Good fun, a great way to keep in touch with friends. That's God's own scale. That is absolutely up in Staffordshire. That is absolutely key point. It is a really great way to keep in touch with friends. We had 9 of us on the Lard Island Club thing. Join us on Saturday, Rich. It's a very informal chat whilst we paint, keeps us off the streets. Well, I would do, but unfortunately I'm looking at houses on Saturday, believe it or not. My daughter's decided to move out, but she wants me to give her advice on whether the ones she's looking at are falling down. But drop me an email. I'll see if I can do that. We'll have to find out what time it is. But you're right. I mean, Ralph makes the point. It's a very informal chat and it keeps us off the streets. And it does. But more importantly, it keeps us all sane. And what is remarkable, actually, is how productive you can be whilst doing something like this. I mean, I'm just tidying up these figures, which actually there's so little flash on them, I think I might have done it already. But I'm just doing these, and admittedly, I've got the wrong glasses on, so I can't see whether I'm tidying them up very effectively or not. But nevertheless, they've all got very flat bases now. It's remarkable how productive you become. We spend the Tuesday night when we normally have club nights. We meet at 7 and we probably finish about 10, 10:30, 11. Although I finished about 1 o'clock in the morning on Wednesday morning because I was messing about with these bloody buildings that Sydney inspired me to do. And it's amazing how how much we all get done. Imaginary conflicts. Hi from Cornwall. Hello, Cornwall. You could always go on Plastic Crack podcast, run by Miniature Wargaming Warriors, Monday night live stream by low-level wargamers with YouTube channels. Well, sounds like a crack. I shall have to have a look at that. Low-level gamers. I wonder if Mike Hobbs is involved in that. Sorry, Mike, if you're listening. How about a topic for the celebs gets chosen to avoid repetition, e.g. hidden movement, single figures, removable? Well, Chris Payne, good question. And I think the honest answer is we prefer to keep that for the oddcast, because I think there's some really good points there. And I think as game designers, we really enjoy having questions like that to get our teeth into. The way I see this would be, and this is me imposing my ideas on it, so what Clarkey wants isn't necessarily what anybody else wants, but the way I would see this would be really more of creating a club chat environment for people who don't have a club to go to and consequently are feeling very, very isolated from their hobby. And so how we do that, well, I don't know. Maybe the idea is to go towards Discord and having numerous rooms where people can go in, and very much like the Virtual Lard pub that has been run very, very successfully. And it just allows you to move from room to room. The problem is there's always an issue that if people block tables, so you can't necessarily circulate as much as you'd like. All right. Hi, Dominic down in Bayern in Bavaria. Grüß Gott to you. Hello, Ashley. Nice to see you. Good to hear you've eaten first. Any other questions? Anybody want to talk about something other than this? Because if anybody's got any good ideas about this, please do sort of type their comments in, because at the moment my mind is a bit like one of those concrete mixers, which is just going round and round and round, but actually not actually producing anything of any substance. A virtual pub would be great. People could meet on Discord and arrange their own games on Zoom outside of that. I totally agree. How many normally in a Discord room? Well, when we've done a virtual lard, what Jeremy has done is he's tended to set up a virtual pub with 10 different, I think it's 10, but there we go, 10 different tables. And and normally having half a dozen people in each one. So that allows half a dozen people to have a normal Zoom type chat. And Discord does allow you to, go live with video exactly like looking at me here, but obviously there's 6 people on the screen if there are 6 people in there, and it allows those 6 people to have a chat and then move and circulate as you would do in a normal pub. I think the answer is any more than that. And bonjour, Leslie in Normandy. Nice to hear from you. So I think kind of creating something along similar lines. Sorry, I'm just reading the thread coming through. Charlie is saying that it's quieter in a paint and chat than in the virtual. Is it quieter in a paint and chat than in the virtual lard pub? Well, you'd have to presume so. The thing tying this in that's also just being discussed is virtual lard. Virtual lard is happening. Virtual lard 4 is happening on June the 30th, which is a Saturday. The format for that normally is that you play a game in the morning and then you play a game in the afternoon, and then we have the pub in the evening for people who want to mix and have a few drinks and just generally chew the fat, which is a nice format. I would presume that a paint and build session is going to be quieter than an evening in a virtual lard pub, especially as the evening goes on and people have consumed more beer. Virtual lard 4 games are being released next week, apparently. And get in quick is the advice from Ian Roberts. Okay, thank you. It would be January, not June. Did I say June? I do apologise. It would be good for people who haven't been to that event before to maybe come along, and that's a great place to make new contacts with people who are going to be gaming outside the structure of virtual lard. And so maybe creating an environment where we have a Discord channel which is open and can remain open, and people can sort of remain there and go there at any time, like effectively a virtual clubhouse. And so if you decide that you want to paint on a Wednesday evening, you go along. There might be 1, 2, 3 other people there, or there might be nobody there. So you just sit there and do your own stuff, and then the chances are somebody would come along. So we could try that as a model. We could also then that could be used for other people to spin off and create their own games, because there's lots of people who are running their own games, and that would be and there are quite a few people who are likely to come along and say, I'd like to get involved in a game. And certainly in the lard community, the emphasis is very much on encouraging people to take part, and I'm absolutely convinced that anybody coming along, if we set up that kind of Discord lard clubhouse, or maybe tied that in with the virtual lard Discord channel, because that has been doing that job already. If anybody knows any more on that, please post. Then maybe we could use that. Any news on Salute? Well, it won't be happening. Any views on whether it ought to go ahead? There's an interesting conundrum there for the organisers. Last year they postponed it because all the traders will have paid them for their stands. So, for example, I don't know what we paid them, 500 quid or something like that. And they've got our money. Now, I'm not bothered about that, to be honest with you. But my attitude is, well, when it happens, we've already paid in advance. So if it's this year or next year or whatever, that's fine. But there does come a question where, can you legitimately say, well, we've postponed it again? I don't know. That's an issue for the organisers. Can they postpone it again, or will they have to cancel it? I don't know, because I'm sure the South London Warlords is not a profit-making organisation. It's a club. So, and I'm sure they will have spent out some money in terms of advertising for the last, not for this year, obviously, but for last year. And I'm sure that some of that money that was paid into them would have been used up as part of their budget. And I don't think any of us would want to see South London Warlords bankrupted by having to cancel an event. So my guess is that they are probably going to have to do what they did and simply postpone it again till next year. But I don't know. Somebody's saying, is there a Discord? There is Discord. Discord is very confusing. Somebody else is saying, that's interesting. Actually, I find Discord quite non-confusing. But when I first went on there, I did find it slightly problematic getting my head around it. But it's kind of one of those things like the first time you bought a computer, thinking, what the hell, how does this work? And what's this Word thing? And how do I use it? And of course, now we use Word just as easily as we use a pen or pencil. If you can share slides, how about celebrities sharing some pictures of the latest game? Well, we're not playing a game. Or painted models or units. Yeah, absolutely. I think that's a great idea. I mean, I'm not really sure that there are any celebrities in the hobby. At the end of the day, whatever people say about the hobby becoming a big business and things like that. Yeah, and Julian's asking, has anybody got the link to the Lardy Discord? If somebody could post that would be great, because obviously I am doing other things at the moment. It's a virtual Lard, but there are some rooms still attached to that. Charlie says he quite likes the idea of people just parking themselves in the Lard Discord area while they paint and model. Others will join, and they will. And I think that's the key thing. That I think what I'm going to start doing is using I don't know, I didn't think of this before. Actually, this might be the answer to the question. What I think I'm going to start doing, not now, is going on to the virtual Lard pub when I spend an evening painting, and then just kind of hang out there. And I'm sure people will. I'm sure people will turn up. But maybe we need to do a piece for Lard Island News explaining exactly how that works. How does that sound? So what we've done is we've gone from a point of asking a question and saying, what the bloody hell are we going to do about this, to then saying, well, this clearly isn't the answer, because looking at my ugly face for an hour and a half is boring. And listening to the cogs of my brain going round is possibly doesn't improve that situation. So we've got to a situation now, possibly, where we're saying we create a Lardy space on Discord. And what it might be better to do is to create a very simple Lardy space on Discord, so that people who haven't used it before or who find it confusing will find it less confusing. Because I went in Virtual Lard, and Virtual Lard has now got the remnants of the last 3 events on, and it's got the pubs on there and so on and so forth. But so it might be worth creating a space on Discord so that we can go there and actually, even if we use that as the portal to point people in other directions, but at least starts it off as an entry point. And if I'm going to, hello, Paul up in Staffordshire, nice to see you. Douglas Trail, the traitor McKipper, says the pub is a good idea. Nothing if not predictable. Thank you, Dougie, for that. But I think it is a good idea, actually. Yeah, and I think it's a good idea that if we're going to hang out places, why not go and hang out there when I'm sticking these pikes on? Dougie, 8 centimeter pikes, by the way. Yeah. So we've kind of. Okay, what I'll do is I will set up something on Discord, and I'm going to put a piece on Lard Island News about it. How does that sound? Good evening to the Netherlands. Rattlesnake says the pub sounds great. Yeah, well, it's... And at least if people were going there, they would then get to hear about Virtual Lard, and they'd get to hear about other games on Zoom or other media, and then that hopefully would allow them to hook up with other people, you know, that they've never met before. I mean, one of the great things about what I've discovered in lockdown is, you know, gaming with people that I haven't met before, or who I would never have considered gaming with before. Some guy came over from Australia, and I had a few beers with them. They came here for a game. They came over for the big Waterloo game in Glasgow. I now game those guys every week. Fabulous idea. Can I bring a non-alcoholic drink? Says Paul Edwards. Well, you can, mate. That's perfectly reasonable. In fact, I'm on a non-alcoholic drink now. Although I'm thinking about changing that situation. Right, now, I'm actually going to start sticking some things on here, otherwise I'll end up not achieving very much. This glue is so bloody strong, I can't get the lid off. What glue do people use for sticking pipes on? I find that super glue is too brittle, and I've been using EvoStick Impact, which you put a dollop on and leave it for 5 minutes and then apply it. The only thing is, it pours out and goes everywhere. Not all the time, but only at the moment when you don't want it to happen. But I guess that's life. O Group, somebody was asking about. Had another editorial session on that today. We have got the final, I can't see what people are saying, so here we go. We've got the rules going back to Henry, who's doing the layout. We've got all the images gone to Henry, all the layouts done, apart from the fact we decided, oh, we want to move things about a bit. It would be better if we put this image in here rather than there. So that's slightly going to change the pages. EvoStick yellows with age. It does, but when you've got paint on top of it, it don't yellow that much. Yeah, so the rules have gone back to, I know what I need. Hold on, I'll show you a trick. Right. When I stick pikes on figures, I find that they wobble all over the place. So what I do is I get one of my, I was going to say my wife's clothes pegs, but that'd be extraordinarily sexist. I get one of our clothes pegs that my wife uses, and I have it grasp the figure like that. and it holds it in place for long enough. The thing about this Evo stick is it never actually seems to dry, but it does hold it, and consequently it's a little bit more flexible, so you don't get that brittleness that you get with super glue, whereby if you knock it, it goes for a Burton. But it does obviously just have that little bit more flexibility. Well, this bloody idea don't work at all. There's a particular pose that is problematic, and you have to get it just right, which I now have. Right, what are you doing? I only buy very small containers of super glue, as the tops always stick together. I totally agree. I got 2 new ones last week, which are this size, small, very far away. It's not actually as big as me. So it's about slightly smaller than my ear, or larger if you consider the top. And the bloody top's already broken, so it is problematic. I've been drilling a tiny hole in the hand so the pike gets in. Well, I was intending to do that, Raymond, but these figures, there was no place for a hole to go. However, talking of tiny holes, I don't know if you can see that black dot. I stabbed myself with a pen, and I permanently tattooed my hand last week, which is rather annoying. I'm thinking about cutting it out with a scalpel, but fuck it. Right, so there, this figure here is a, go one way, there we go, is a horrible one. So what you have to do is you have to put the clip on the arm, and you have to wiggle it about until you get it right. Vaseline on the thread of a super glue bottle. Oh, that is such a clever idea. That is a really clever idea, actually, Ashley. I can't see what I'm doing. If you get one tattoo, you want another on here. Well, I got my first tattoo in 1979, and I've never wanted another one since. Albeit that one wasn't done by fooling on a mapping pen. That I was using to detail a building. Right, I feel a bit guilty now. Having felt guilty that I was talking too much, I now feel guilty that I'm not talking enough. But I did say that it was a paint things, build things session, so I will overcome my guilt. Although I will change glasses every 5 minutes to see what you're saying. A few more dots and the shape of a pie and a pint. That's a good idea, actually. Right, what was I telling you about? O Group? Yeah, so it's going back. I've just sent Henry a load of images, which he is now dropping into the text. That's going to change the pagination, whatever the word is, change the shape of the document, basically. And then we get it back and we just check. That may well create some, that may well mean that some images that we're going to go in certain places are now superfluous, and it may mean that other images that we're going to go in other places. But literally we're at the point of dropping the images in, which is what we do last. So I've got a meeting, or a conversation with Henry on Monday, and that point in time, we will discover exactly what the final things are we need to do. But all the text is done, and we should have it with the printer. We should have it back for the final proofread early next week, and hopefully at the printer before the end of next week. Publishing rules in lockdown is a odd thing to do. The way you sell rules is that people who are really keen to get the rules will buy the rules, and then they'll take them to the club and they will play them with their mates. And their mates will go, cool, blimey, that was a good game. But that ain't going to happen. So publishing rules at the moment means that you get one bite of a cherry rather than two bites of a cherry, if I'm putting it in blatantly commercialistic terms. But unfortunately, we live in a world full colour rules, and you've got to make tokens and do all the other bits and pieces. So one has to take a vaguely commercial approach, because there's no point in losing money. So it's a tough decision, but as with Infamy, I took the decision that life's tough enough as it is without disappointing people and saying, no, we're going to wait till God knows when. So we are going ahead, and it's not being delayed by COVID or anything like that. And we're also hoping that Dave is going to have the first scenario book ready pretty much around a similar time. Go with that, which I think lots of people will appreciate, because it will give you an insight into the way he runs his game and plays his games, which I always find one of the things most helpful with any set of rules is to see what the author intended with the scenarios, and see how they design their games, because that kind of is not just having the cake, but seeing the chef eat it as well, to extend the analogy in a totally inappropriate way. Right, I'm just trying to get this pikey clothes peg on. That came out wrong. Yeah, so that's going ahead, and I had a word with the printer week before Christmas. Funnily enough, it's not innovative work, so we should have that released around the end of January, beginning of February. Dave okayed the token set yesterday, and I had a discussion with the manufacturer today with one slight change to that. So we're just waiting to approve the final version of that. So it's a case of trying to find out when everything can arrive at the same time, which is the key of getting all your threads together in the right order. I know which glasses I'm meant to be wearing at this point. These ones. So Easter. No, not Easter. Not Easter. The old ones are the best, they tell me. I need some specs like the snooker player. Well, I've got about 4 sets of glasses. I use these, which are 1.5 magnification, to look at the screen. I use these, which are 3 times magnification, or 3.5 now, when I'm painting. I use these when I'm reading a book. These are 2.5. And I use these when I'm driving a car, and they're varifocal. it gets to that point in life where you're a bit buggered, really. Now, what do we have here? How does the new situation affect shipping to the EU? It's a good question. Well, the answer is we have to fill in a customs form, but other than that, nothing. What it does mean is that we now do not charge VAT on our products going to the European Union until we pass the threshold for doing so. And at the moment, obviously, as we're starting with a blank sheet of paper, it means that at this moment in time, there's no VAT on any of our products going to Europe. The issue there is that books obviously are 0 rated for VAT. They're not VAT free, but the VAT rate in the UK is 0 for them. So that probably won't affect much. So it's things like the token sets that are now VAT free. We had a situation where PDF products were always VATable at 20% up until the first lockdown in the UK, when that was removed by the government, who said that all books in electronic format are now 0 rated for VAT as well. So the honest answer is it might be a little bit cheaper for you if you're buying bundles, but the shipping shouldn't be affected at all. That's what's happening here. It depends what happens on the continent, to be honest with you. I mean, I did have one friend in Belgium who said, ha, 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 Belgian postmen are not going to deliver stuff from England. They're going to throw it in wherever they throw it in. But I can't believe that, to be honest with you. I just think nothing will happen. Right, specs off, more pikes on. What I like to do is not abandon this format altogether, but maybe get some people on here over the next couple of weeks to talk about their experiences of gaming in lockdown and positive things they've done. Now, one of the things that we have done as a club is on the usual club night, as well as just painting and talking rubbish, we went through a phase of doing a quiz every week, and we took it in turns in doing that. And one week somebody would do a quiz on one aspect of military history, and another week somebody would do it on another aspect of military history. And throughout the evening, we'd have 3 rounds of that. So you maybe have the first one, let's say we were hooking up at 7:30. You maybe have the first one at 8:15, the next one at 9 o'clock, the next one at 9:30. It just breaks up the evening and makes it a bit interesting, gives some interesting points to talk about. Prince Rupert's flying dog, Boy the flying dog, was a big favourite of Sydney in his quiz. We really enjoyed that. I have to say that it's an art to writing quizzes, and I learned this many years ago when I was a publican in North London. And the answer to a successful quiz is to make sure everybody can answer 60% of the questions, and make sure the majority of people can answer 80% of the questions, and then really make sure half the people can answer 90% of the questions, and allow the victors that 10% margin where they show how clever they are. And in that way, everybody will feel engaged. Everybody will feel, foolishly, that they had a chance to win. And everybody will enjoy themselves. A quiz is an opportunity for them to show how clever they are, not how clever you are, in terms of devising questions that nobody can know. But doing things like that does make it a bit more fun. And you can also vary that by, doing other projects. Like what we had a quiz on painting section that we did before Christmas, which is a quiz based on all the Lard Island Christmas games that we've had with Mrs. Slocum and the Space Nazis and so on and so forth. And it was good fun. It was good to reminisce with mates. So varying what you're doing and not just sitting there painting figures, but putting a little bit of effort in, and of course sharing that load. I could do the quiz one week, Sid could do it the next week, Nick could do it the next week, the traitor McKipper the next week, and so on and so forth, and that keeps it fresh and interesting. One of the other things that we looked at doing but didn't do it actually in the end because I got a bit busy was running a Kriegspiel. Now, not necessarily doing that every week because there's a bit of a lot of work involved with that, but just doing it to break the monotony of what you're doing. So there's lots of ideas in there that you can do, and doing that on a club paint and scratch and sniff night, or whatever you want to call it, paint and build night, is kind of a great opportunity to do your first Zoom game, because they're your mates. They're not going to judge you. But they are going to appreciate the fact that, you're trying something for the first time. And I did my first Zoom game for the lads on Lard Island on the basis that I thought this is going to be bloody difficult and I'm really going to mess this up. But I didn't, and it was really easy. And if a half-wit like me can do it, really, it's pretty accessible to anybody. So maybe we can use this. I mean, Charlie and John Savage have both been on the Oddcast and talked a bit about the issue of online gaming. Maybe it would be a good idea to have them come on here so you can see their ugly, gurning faces. And that could be something that people would find helpful. Maybe we can have somebody on who knows all about Discord, and we can put some slides together to allow people who've never used it before to learn of its wonders and magic, and just to try and make access simple. Right, I'll put this on, and I'll take my specs off and put the other specs on and read what people are saying. Probably shut up, you're really boring. No, not them, these. Right. Recently bought a Kriegspiel bundle. Any tips on how to get started? Look, it's a bit daunting at first. Yeah, it is. Read it, and then don't expect to do it like that. The best way to get involved is to get involved with somebody else who's running a Kriegspiel game. Hello, Chip Branner. Good afternoon, good evening, good afternoon to you. The best way to do it is to get involved with somebody else doing it, maybe to act as an assistant umpire, or probably the best thing would be to take part, maybe have ways. Sorry, I'm reading what people are saying and not concentrating. Have a game and then get involved operating as an assistant umpire. Hello, Derek. And I gave you in before Christmas to say Happy Christmas, but you couldn't bother to take my call. But I realised that since you've retired, not switching the phone on is probably the most important part of your day, and I can't blame you for that, mate. But happy Christmas, happy New Year, happy Hogmanay, and nice to see you. Nice. I hope retirement is suiting you well. Yeah, Kriegspiel is a concept. To be honest with you, Kriegspiel is a bit like religion, and if anybody being converted into a religion was told the best way to do it would be to read the Bible, it probably would put 99% of people off because it would look like hard work. But whereas going to a church flower arranging class and chatting with people is the way that people tend to do it. Not that I know about these things, but I hope you can see the analogy in terms of reading Kriegspiel is really, really interesting, but it does look daunting. The important thing to realize is that people don't use the rules that are in the book, but what they do is they use the structure that is in the book. Once I get O Group out of the way, which as we've discussed isn't far away, I'm going to be running some Kriegspiels, so it might be a good opportunity to get some people like yourself who've never been involved and get them playing, because that's what we're all about. I mean, there's quite a few names on here. Andy Crow, Fred Worthington, Fred, who's really called Charlie up in the Borders. He played his first Kriegspiel at Southampton this year, and now he's run a number of them and taken part in a number of them. Andy Crow and his mate Reg from Dagenham, they took part in one of the games that we ran, and he's run Kriegspiels that I've been involved in now, and I think they would all agree that it's a different experience. What Nick and I are looking at doing and talking about doing, and whether it happens or not, of course, is writing a book on how to run Kriegspiel in the 21st century. Are we in the 21st century? Yeah, we are, aren't we? And I think that would be useful, because Kriegspiel in its 19th century form talks about how you utilize space, how you organize your teams, all of which then you needed physical space to do, but which you don't need physical space to do now. So it would be helpful to do that. A really good question from Doc Finn. Any update on the Pacific Chain of Command Handbook? Yeah, the plan was for me to read a huge pile of books on the Far East over Christmas, but good day, Ben. It's Ben down there in Sydney, where apparently it is raining. Nice to hear from you. Yeah, the question was any news on the Far East and Pacific Theatre Handbook. The plan was to read a huge pile of books over Christmas. To be honest with you, by the time I got to Christmas, having had 5 days off all year, I was so exhausted. I thought, bollocks, I'm not going to do it. And I got wrapped up in messing about with land snakes. So I have got a pile of books to read. Once I've got O Group out of the way, which, as we're saying, is going to be happening this week, that is going to clear up space. And I've even bought a new reading chair, which is a chair that doesn't read. I read while sat in it. It's not like Hogwarts. So I've got it there, and I've got a table which is the ideal size for a bottle of wine and glass, and I'm really set up for reading. So it's very much on the way. But yes, and I think as part of setting up a Discord for a Lard portal, that will allow people to be pointed on from that. And Derek, yes, Punit Wars is also on there. Again, that's another major reading project. But what I'm trying to do is do one thing at a time. And the Far East Handbook is, after I've been focusing on O Group, that's got to get out. The Lard magazine obviously then has to happen, and that has to happen on the time schedule. And then I'm going to be focusing on the Far East and then on the Punic Wars. Did I get started with Hex and Counters, or have I always been a mini gamers? Said Yerd One Bacon. No, always figures, and never minis. Funnily enough, I'm old enough that I never ever, don't think anyway, I never refer to miniatures as miniatures. I always call them figures. I don't know, it's not some kind of snobbery, it was just what they were called when I started. But yeah, always figures. The first figures that I ever bought, metal figures, were 15mm minifigs, English Civil War. So I'm here, man, all those years later, still sticking pikes on. Man. Storm of Steel, late to the party. Or hello, Storm of Steel, nice to see you. Yeah, Gav in Poland. Hello, Gav. Yeah, Sharp Practice. I feel Sharp Practice coming on. I bought some more Austrians over Christmas, which I thought, oh, I'll paint these, but I didn't get them out of the packet. Right, I seem to have run out of pikes. That's not the right result. Oh no, I haven't. There's loads more here. Looking forward to Ogre Pacific Anime. Any word on the Arnhem supplement? I had a chat with Nicholas yesterday. He's whinging at me. Oh, it's remarkable how these things happen, because I have created the Arnhem Handbook is a series, if you like, of self-contained little campaigns. So you can, bloody hell, these spears are tough. So you can play them individually. So you might decide there are 3 major sections. So you've got, Nick was telling me yesterday, we had a meeting on it yesterday, and I'm not going to admit that I wasn't listening to him fully, but some bits swept past me in a torrent of his gushing enthusiasm. There are 3 main sections. The first one being, I think, Joe's Bridge all the way to the point where 30 Corps link up with the US Airborne. So that would be somewhere, you know, probably around Somme. And then the next phase is the fight north. And then the final section is, I think, the island and Arnhem. No, sorry, the second section includes the island. And then the final section is Arnhem. And as part of the Arnhem bit, I have created the Sepp Craft campaign, which is a bit that I'm really interested in, which is the initial actions around Wolfhazer with Sepp Craft's impromptu camp group, which does such an important job in holding the line there, while the Germans then can create a more formidable defensive position further to the east. And I hate to use the term "it will be out by Easter," but he did actually use that phrase. So make of that what you like. What I do know is that he has bought enough books to bought a new house in order to get his research right on this. And it's interesting how much is known on Arnhem and how much of it is cobblers. And yet there's a lot of really good information out there, which is accessible if you spend a lot of money on it. And that's, I guess, true of life. But for that campaign in particular, you know, there are a lot of very, very knowledgeable people. I can't see. That's bollocks. Ink. Glue going everywhere. There's a lot of very, very knowledgeable people who know an awful lot about Arnhem. It's a kind of a mini hobby in its own way. But the information is not readily available to the, you know, the general reader. This stuff is published by some pretty impressive publishing houses who are not embarrassed about, you know, charging hundreds of pounds for a volume. He's just bought a book, which he got for a couple of £100, which normally goes on eBay for £1,500. And it's those obscurities that actually go together, in the words of Paddy Griffiths, as a sort of tactical snippeting exercise. You won't find everything in the same place, but you can find everything if you go to 1,000,001 different places, put all that together. So it's been a labour of love. The thing about Nicholas is he approaches things, I mean, I hope we both do, but he approaches things as a real historian, and he is very dogged in his in the way that he undertakes that. One of the things, it's funny actually, he's a hypocritical shit. One of the things he's always saying to me is, you've got to accept that when you work on something, it can never be perfect. It can only be good enough, which is all part of his jibber jabber management speak that he talks in his professional role when he's talking to these companies who are doing business wargaming, and you know they're saying we haven't got long enough to plan, and he's saying, well, you know, we haven't got long enough to plan, but you can't expect to make the perfect plan. You've got to get it to a point where it's acceptable. But that is not what he has done with this supplement, because he's really undertaken, you know, one of the most comprehensive research projects in order to try and get it right. And I admire him for that. One of the things that we've always tried, and this is what I'm trying to replicate with the Far East handbook. And that is frustrating for people who would rather that we just rattled it off. And I do have to admit, when I'm sat there and looking at the amount of research that I'm doing into some obscure Singapore Straits volunteers, I do wonder, will anybody ever game with these? Is all this research really worthwhile? But I think you do have to have certain standards that you aspire to, and hopefully that the end product makes it worthwhile when it does come out. And I don't think anybody will die on the basis that we've taken 2 years longer to produce an Arnhem supplement than we would have liked to have done. But I do think many people will be pleased when they get something that actually has value as not just a wargame supplement, but also a research piece that you would want to refer to when trying to understand what happened there. So that's kind of that. I can't read your comments, but I'm busy sticking on pikes. So with my luxury clothes peg pike trick. Last one, and then I'll swap the optics. The computer game Close Combat 2 used a very similar system on its campaigns, dividing it by sectors, campaigns, and operations. Do you know what? I can't remember that one. I used to play a lot of World War II computer games. In fact, when I'm going back 20 years ago now, because I operate on a Mac now, and actually getting games to operate on a Mac, I find problematic. And the other thing, to be honest with you, is I find them to be a real thief of time, and therefore I try not to spend time playing computer war games, because I know that it's getting in my way of doing what I should be doing. But yeah, I think that I remember that game. Yeah. Andy Crow sucking his teeth. Perfectionists make good stuff, hopefully. That's what we try. Somebody's mentioning beer. Thinking about that. I don't know what the time is. Oh, right. Okay. I'm thinking about exploring Napoleonic sieges. Any recommendations, rules, or plans for the future of sharp practice? Wouldn't it be good? Wouldn't it be good? Hold on a minute. I don't know is the answer. I mean, the reason I'm hesitating is that because I'm looking at the Renaissance, there's a lot of siege warfare in the Italian wars, and it's something I'm looking at the moment. And one of the first war games magazines I ever bought was a magazine called Battle for Wargamers, and I think we must be going back to 1974, which 1,000,001 people now post and say, I wasn't even born then. Well, I was. Otherwise, I wouldn't have been W.H. Smith's buying magazines. And it had a series in it called The Siege of Dendermonde. I've never heard of Dendermonde. I still haven't. But it was a fabulous series, if somewhat mental. Probably not allowed to say mental. It was somewhat mental, where the guy was refighting this huge siege, and I don't know if he had his. I got the impression that he had the whole of this city set up, and it never came down. And he refought little actions that would be perfect for sharp practice. So the attack on the postern gate, or whatever, and it was rather inspiring. I mean, it was rather mad, but it was rather inspiring. So maybe there's something there. One of the things that we have been talking about is maybe doing something with the Three Musketeers. Martin at Warlord is producing some musketeer figures, and we saw them, and well, Nick and Sid saw them really rather than me, and they started bleating on about them. And we're all quite inspired by doing something. And it may be that that type of game could involve a lot of that type of buggering about in Belgian towns. Who knows? But yeah, I think it's interesting. The classic book on siege warfare was Siege Warfare by, can't remember his name. I can't remember his name, and I think it's in the library annex, which might be over there now. Duffy. Somebody Duffy, Siege Warfare. It was the classic on the subject. Somebody's going to put the name, surely to God, somebody's going to put the name in to help me out. Christopher Duffy, I think. Now, I honestly haven't read it since, I think, the 1980s, but it'd be well worth a look. I'm going to have to buy it. Oh, yeah, Al Malley and James Holland are on soon. I'm sure they'll be preaching more wisdom than what I've got to say. Thanks very much for those who've attended. Cheerio if you're off. Hopefully we have solved the riddle of what we're going to do with getting that community working for people who are feeling isolated. So thanks very much for attending and making your contributions if you're there. I'm not going yet because I've still got some pikes to do, and everybody else is welcome to. Duffy, yeah, that's right. John Savage has said Duffy. He has. Christopher has Cornwell said Christopher Duffy. You're right, guys. You're right. And I presume it's still available. And it was just about it was the work, but it was also the only work at the time. Ian Roberts asks about, are we going to do Italy for Chain of Command? Yeah, we are. We're going to work through all the theatres. After we do the Far East and the Pacific Theatre, depending on who you talk to, we are going to do either the Mediterranean, which will involve North Africa, Crete, probably not Italy, because one of the things I have discovered from doing the Far East Handbook is that is too big, and it has really delayed it. It is such a colossal subject. We should really have split it down into the Pacific Theatre and the Far East. So, in other words, British sphere of influence and the US sphere of influence. The problem is, being brutally honest, that the number of people who are interested in gaming the Far East and the Pacific Theatre is relatively small. And consequently, if we did it as two books, we would lose money. What am I using for pikes? I'm using pikes that I bought from North Star when I was up there on Monday, I think I was. They are 10 centimetres long, and I cut them down to 8 centimetres. And you used to have to get brass ones that were brassy in colour, obviously, and you can't. Now these are flipping heck steel, and they are steel as well. They're a job to cut, but and you can stab yourself on them very easily. So yeah, I'm very keen to do the D-Day Dodgers in Italy. The question is, how would that fit? What we would probably do if we're doing Italy is it will be a combination of Italy, Sicily, obviously, as part of Italy, but it will probably also cover the Greek campaign of 1940-41. It will probably cover partisans, Tito, Albanians, blah, blah, blah. So quite a bit of variety in there, hopefully. Or the alternative to doing the desert is that we go east and do Blitzkrieg in the east up to and including Stalingrad, both of which have appeals. It's not really a commercial decision. Crete would be covered in the Mediterranean book, the North African book. It's not really a commercial decision. It's what I fancy doing at the time. And the problem is I fancy doing both, but you can't do that. So we'll have to see. I mean, I think probably being sensible about it, the Chain of Command Handbook, the Far East is going to be the one for this year, and we're not going to see another one till next year. Because I want to do Infamy Part 2. That's very important to me because I've painted up a load of armies for it already, and I'm very keen to get some more painted as well. I don't know what my wife's going to do when she hangs out the washing tomorrow. Thank you, Jason. I mean, hopefully we came to the conclusion that we wanted to come to. Would East Africa be covered in the same? Yeah, it would be. I'd cover that in the same book as North Africa. So it would be Africa and Crete would be one book, and that obviously would cover the US landings off to the west and their advance on Tunis, and it would cover East Africa as well. Very interesting in East Africa as a theatre, really interesting. Really think the Italians need a lot more love, as they're a really interesting force to game with. But yeah, Japanese and Malaya are top of my pile. I've finished the research on Malaya. I've pretty much finished the research on Burma. I'm just going on. I've got a lot of reading to do on Hong Kong. I've got to look at I've been reading the Canadian official reports on that, which proved interesting. Some period reading. I've got the regimental diaries of the two Canadian. Hello, Marco in Milano. Nice to have you join us. I've got the two Canadian histories. I think it's very important to read those. The Canadians get a lot of flack for their performance in Hong Kong. Now, is that warranted or is it unwarranted? The honest answer is I don't know. And that's why I need to read those documents. Now, what I do know is that I have read the Canadian official inquiry into it, which was published in 1942, and that draws the conclusion officially, and is officially what COCODA. Yeah, it will, Ben. Yes, mate. Yeah, the COCODA trail will be covered in that Far East and Pacific Theatre. Yeah, so the Canadians in Hong Kong, their official royal inquiry in 1942 suggests that they sent two third-rate battalions because they were under the impression that it would be a flag-wagging exercise, and that all that we had to do to stop the Japanese invading was to deploy troops there, and then the Japanese would go, oh gosh, the British are serious, we're not going to do that. The report suggests that the troops who were sent there were short on training, short on equipment. I do have information about when they received certain equipment, but I need to tie that in with research about what stores were drawn on in Hong Kong, which I've got that information. I've also got the regimental histories, which are again important to do that. So that's important to do that. Is Milne Bay going to be covered, says Tamsin? Yes, absolutely. The guy who's been preparing this with me is the guy who was the former commander of the Australian Army Jungle Warfare School, and he is an expert on all those areas. So that is very much that, and the Australians generally are going to be a key part of that book. Interesting forces that they are, and interesting actions that were fought there. One of the big issues is we've got to produce rules that cover the different types of terrain. And, you look at things like the COCODA Trail. I mean, it's just terrain that you don't experience anywhere else. And you look how that compares, for example, to Malaya, completely different. So it's trying to get all of that covered, and all of that covered in a way that is going to make it interesting. So Julian Dale says, reading Wargames Illustrated, it has some great articles on supply and logistics. Wonder what you thought on that area of wargaming. Does it add depth or drag the game into micromanagement? I think it depends, really. Does it include Khalkhin the 45 invasion of Manchuria? No, it does include the Chinese forces, though. But no, it doesn't go into that sideshow, basically because there is a limit to how much we can cover, and I do wonder where it will end, to be honest with you, but end it must. What do I think about supply and logistics? Supply and logistics are really important in warfare. Are they important at platoon level? Not as much as they are as if you're commanding a division. However, does it a market garden? Yes, out in 2021, David W. Definitely. It's important in terms of it's a driver when you look at the Japanese campaign in Burma. and Arakan and the advance into India was all about attempting to seize and utilize Churchill supplies, as they called them, using what the British had in order to maintain their drive. So it's important to reflect that, but that's more of a reflection in support options, support lists, and more of an option in how pint-sized campaigns are put together for that theatre. And I think it's important that we're going to be bringing out pint-sized campaigns to cover that theatre, which I think it's that level of detail about logistics is important in the big overall picture. But how much it influences each individual game. I mean, I know that there are rules where, every time you fire your tank, you've got to track that expenditure of ammunition. I don't really want to play that. It doesn't suit me. I don't believe that in a platoon level action where your tank might fire 5 or 6 times, I don't think it's necessary to track ammunition. Whereas, on the other hand, we fought at Kriegspiel where we were doing the Battle of Amiens in 1918. That was all about logistics, and you couldn't play that game without logistics. In fact, the logistics drove the operational planning, and that was what the game was all about. So it's a case of bringing it in when it's pertinent and important at any point. Right, I've done my pikes. 5 minutes, and I think I'm going to go. I can't stop not to watch the other half company. No, I know what you mean. I think my wife might like a conversation with me. Have I read the story of John Robert Osborne, how he won his VC in Hong Kong? No, I haven't read the story of it, but I know of the events there, so I need to go through that in some detail. I've been able to get some really good books on Hong Kong Volunteer Defence Force, which are really, really interesting. I've got a good friend who's in Royal Hong Kong Police Force, and I've got some friends who are in Hong Kong now, and so it's good to be able to ask people questions there. But yeah, good. Hello, Sean. Just in time to say hello, wave goodbye, as a wise man once sang. Okay, right. Well, I've said it before, and I'll say it again. I think we've come to some conclusion about how we're going to go forward. What I'll do is I'll talk to some people who I think will be hopefully have something interesting to say, and hopefully we can get back together and do something here where we've got some talking heads on, and you'll be able to ask them questions, and then hopefully we can get something. Just finished discussing Thatcher with Olve. Is he looking to have his roof done? Right, okay, and then we will have the opportunity to get you asking them some questions. We'll also set up something on Discord that will act as a portal, and that hopefully will then allow you to zoom off to find out about things like virtual LARD. It will allow you to find out about Lardy games that are going on. It will also create an area where we can hang out and just stick pikes on things and tattoo your hand like mine. Bloody hell. And there we are. So I think it's been worthwhile. Thanks very much. I really appreciate everybody coming in and chipping in with their comments. And live long and prosper, or whatever it is. Ciao.